Don't worry. Like and subscribe. Airtime Podcast. Turn that bell on. Don't miss an episode.
This is the battery that you grabbed this morning?
All right, everybody, welcome back to the show. We have an absolute legend from Norway, the Kingdom of Norway, Andreas Wiig. Thanks for joining us on the podcast. How you doing?
I'm doing good, thanks. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm a little bit tired, if I'm being honest. We had back-to-back premieres on Saturday and Sunday for our new film Plank that just came out today on the Bomb Hole, and they weren't like massive nights, you know. I don't really go like, I'm not like 20 anymore and I'm getting blackout and stuff like that, but I definitely drank a fair bit. And now I'm just like tired.
Now you're awake. And it's still early in Canada. So it was a good premiere, huh?
It was a good premiere. It was a really good turnout. We had I think just shy of 400 people at the premiere, so it was a really good turnout. And now that COVID's kind of dissipated, it was really nice to like get the community back together and have some tins.
Yeah.
it was
it's
much
about time.
It was. And I mean, I'm imagining you've gone to a fair bit of premieres. Maybe we can start there. What was the best what's the best premiere you've ever been to?
Well, the best, I think some of the premieres we had with the video gangs when snowboarding was still kind of super crazy in some parts of the world, where some of the premieres we showed up in the premiere bus and it was, you know, so packed that it was maybe 1,000 people, I don't know, a lot of people outside because they couldn't even get in. Like in Italy, I remember it was crazy, and a lot of countries in Europe and in the States and in Canada as well. Yeah. So
did you guys have like a bus that said video gangs on the side of it?
No, we didn't that year. We had a bus way later for the Fuck It premiere.
And it said "fuck it" across it.
Yeah, I can't remember. No, I don't think it said "fuck it." It was a full-on like tour bus made for, you know, some kind of a rock band.
Man, those must have been crazy times. Like video gangs. That's one of my favorite movies ever, and definitely want to touch on that chapter. But let's throw this back to you being young in Norway. When and why did you start snowboarding? And I mean, you asked that question, or I asked that question to a lot of guests, but you're at that time frame when I'm imagining there's not that many people snowboarding in Norway. So how did you start? How did you first hear of snowboarding?
There wasn't that many people snowboarding at the time, and I was skiing in the local resort where we lived like 400 meters, maybe like a 12. I don't know. You do meters in Canada?
Yeah, we do meters. We do a little bit of everything.
Yeah. So it was like half kilometer. And most people were skiing, and only a couple of, like maybe 10 people in the whole resort were snowboarding. And I just thought snowboarding looked way more fun, and you could do tricks. Nobody was doing tricks on skis back then. It was before the twin tip times started. So I wanted to do tricks, 360s and 180s and maybe 540s, and it just looked way more fun and playful. Snowboarding looked just more fun. And
so out of that 10 people, was there a couple of them doing tricks and you're like, whoa, tricks? Or are these guys just like carving down the hill?
They were carving down the hill, but they were also doing, you know, small tricks on small jumps. It's still early, and didn't take much for me to get excited about snowboarding. So the first time I tried it was when my sister, she played in the orchestra for kids.
Wow.
And they were going to go to the highest peak in Norway and play and be like the first orchestra to reach the top and play at the top. And instead of going there, I chose to go with one of the dads brought a snowboard and he let me try it in a resort on the glacier nearby. So I never went to the peak, but I started snowboarding instead.
Do you remember which board that was?
That was a board that was way too long for me. I can't remember. But my first snowboard was Burton Craig Kelly.
No way.
Yeah, and I sold it. I should have kept it.
I was just about to ask, did you keep it?
No, I sold it for cheap.
That thing would probably be, well, regardless if it would be worth a pretty penny, it would be rad to keep that board in the collection. So
yeah, that would have been a good one. And but maybe at the time I needed the money to buy another one.
Totally. Yeah, that's the thing, is it's like kind of the snowball effect.
Yeah.
There's so many things I wish I kept when I was younger.
Pretty much
like
all the things.
I had the dopest Video Gangs poster. Like it had like the crew on the no, it had Larry's sequence of the switchback 270 onto that kink rail, and then the flip side just said Video Gangs. And as I mentioned earlier, it was one of my favorite videos ever. But I know you guys were my first major influences. Who were your influences growing up, and like, or did you have them, or were you just like these clueless kids in Norway just like snowboarding's sick, like who cares about the mags? Or were you consuming and digesting that, like the pro level, like the magazines and like early MacDog, Kingpin, Standard kind of movies?
I was reading a lot in the beginning. I was reading a lot of the local mags, from Norway and Sweden, and pretty, didn't take long before Terje, of course, was like the biggest hero. Him and Daniel Franck,
the sickest.
Yeah, so they were like the heroes growing up in the beginning. And then as I got older, I was always, when Jussi started putting out video parts, he became the favorite.
Oh,
yeah.
You could see that in your riding. The Jussi, it's just yeah, he was
so
really
powerful and
yeah.
Big
tricks too, like really pushing like the switchback nines and the cab nines, like when not a lot of people were doing them or holding the grab that long. Jussi was really
definitely ahead of his times. And he had this, like, super early, he was one of the riders that really had the style, and you could see that he was so in control the whole time, and that made him able to focus on the style.
Just because I'm imagining a little bit younger than you, it would be interesting for me to hear Craig Kelly, Daniel Franck, two people that you touch base on there.
Or Terje.
Sorry, yeah.
Craig Kelly. Yeah.
Sorry, Terje. Let's touch on those riders and what drew you into liking their snowboarding so much.
Well, one of the things, there were two of them definitely on top of the snowboarding world at the time, and they both, had really powerful riding styles, and also they were from Norway, so it was easier to relate to those guys as well. Someone coming, joining?
No, there's just a couple boys in here. I'm not sure what they're doing.
But it was just that they made it, from all the to be from Norway and make it into MacDog movies, and Terje and both of them winning the world championships and the X Games and all that. So they were heroes. Yeah, and I feel like back then you watched the snowboard videos. If you got a snowboard video, you watched it 1,000 times, So I probably watched Subject Håkonsen, watched it like 3 times a day.
Yes.
And then you become totally brainwashed,
What was your favorite clip in Subject Håkonsen? Have you watched it that much? I'm imagining there's a couple clips that stood out.
Yeah, what I remember, as I can remember now, like one of the back fives from Rick Skrensen, I think it was. Yeah, the Rick Skrensen part is one that stood out the most for me.
I don't even what is that for? Because
the,
I actually
Rick Skrensen, it's a place in Sweden where they it's like a really cool resort way up north in Sweden. And so it was a part with Terje and Brian Iguchi, that mixed part.
Who had your favorite style back then?
Back then, as I can remember, it was Terje and Daniel.
Oh, the same guys, eh? Just like
Same
those
guys.
were just like the dudes. Who was like a
also
tier?
Some Norwegian guys, or I wasn't, Well, I watched the MacDog movies, and as soon as I started watching those movies, I really like Peter Line's style.
Yeah, Peter Line is the sickest, man. Especially now that I'm older and I watch all those video parts, it's like realizing what somebody like Peter was doing at that time is like insane.
Yeah,
like his rodeos and like and really a diverse, wide range of snowboarding, like innovative tricks, like just nice, clean grabs, and at the same time doing like the most technical, most advanced tricks that nobody's ever seen before.
Yeah,
like the package deal.
Totally. Also, Bjorn Linus, the way he was charging, up in the mountains and going full on, no matter if it was jumps or free riding or
Who are a couple of the underdog who are like the local legends? Like, was there a local guy in Norway that didn't get the same clout as, Terje and Daniel and stuff like that? But like, you were like, this guy was amazing.
There were definitely some local, really good local riders that, there are always riders that they had the talent. Maybe they just didn't have what it took mentally to become, keep on going. And they, maybe they were just too good too early and too excited about partying.
Which happens to a lot of people.
Yeah.
It's a
like
long-term game.
The riders that are too good and it's too easy for them, maybe it's sometimes the riders that are just behind that work a little bit harder. I don't know. That's just a theory I have.
I back that theory because I have a lot of friends that were the most naturally talented snowboarders at my hill are not the guys that are around today.
No,
it was just not. Were you one of the most talented riders at your hill, or did you have to like work so hard to like, learn a new trick? To me, when I look at your snowboarding, I look at somebody who is clearly like gifted.
I don't know.
Do you think that you were gifted?
I think
from
I maybe
young age?
Started as soon as I started snowboarding. I was snowboarding so much that I think talent is just a small part of it, and I think that's why it seemed like it came more natural to me than to my friends. But I think I was kind of a hardworking dude that made it work over time.
Oh, hardworking, I think is an understatement. When you look at your whole career, like, yeah, you need to have a strong mental game if you're going to be in snowboarding for as long as yourself. What do you think influenced you to want to be the best? What was the driving force? What pushed you to want to be as good as you are?
I think it wasn't to be the best. It wasn't always to be like number one instead of another rider. It was more that I just wanted to learn new tricks all the time and learn and continuously just get better. And I guess I just wanted to see how good I could get at the time, but I didn't know what the the level that the riders are at now. I didn't even know about it. So
it is wild to see where we're at now.
Wild.
But you were
But
at
it's cool
that
to see
point.
that in the backcountry there are still limitations that, you know, it's way more difficult to pull the tricks in the backcountry compared to on, as it has always been, on park jumps. And,
Totally. And
it's cool to see that all these riders that are so good in the park, it's still a struggle to make it in the backcountry.
Yeah, it doesn't transition quite as easy. There's definitely a couple riders that have like Mick Morris diving into the backcountry. He quickly picked up.
There are some
Torstein. There's a small group of people, but it's not necessarily like they're the best all around backcountry snowboarder. They're typically really good at like hitting a jump or hitting a, like, if sometimes the step down, which can be a lot more tricky just because of you don't really practice anything in the park that looks like a step down in the backcountry. But navigating down like free riding terrain and actually like doing a lap and then having to like, you know, manage your slough, all that type of stuff. I don't think I've ever seen any rider go from like park to riding like big mountain, like just amazing overnight.
Yeah.
Unless they're like just charging down a line, like going like straight, but like more technical stuff, I think that takes like years to kind of wrap your head around.
But I think Mark and Torstein, they're doing a really good job at it. You know, like the transition they had from the being more like park riders, riding more kind of, you know, more of a park style in the backcountry to where they are now, charging down big faces in Alaska.
Did you watch Natural Selection this year?
Yeah. And yeah, it was awesome, especially when you know how hard it is, you know. I think for like a random person that doesn't know anything about snowboarding, they're like, why aren't they doing the same tricks, you know? But if you know, you know.
What do you think the hardest thing about the backcountry is? What do you think the hardest thing to like if you come from the park and you just get thrown into the backcountry, or what was the hardest thing for you maybe?
I think it's the hardest thing. It's when it came to backcountry jumps. I think the hardest thing was it's just so different how you're just falling forever, and I don't know. It just seemed like the jumps they just feel way bigger, and you're more. It just feels like more times you're kind of you're blind. It's harder to predict when the landing is going to be there.
Totally. Especially like, you growing up and seeing the evolution of the park jump go from a massive mound of snow where the cat would just kind of groom the takeoff and the landing, and it would just look like these two massive boobs that the cat just kind of schmooed up some snow, to looking at where park jumps are right now. And they're so precise. And if you are a park jumper and you're riding any sort of slope style event contest, there's a consistency in those park jumps. And they're designed in a way that double cork, triple cork, double backside rodeo, switchback 16 works perfectly. And then you can't really manicure that same style jump in the backcountry. I mean, you could, but being your own engineer in the backcountry is really hard, and it's a learning process. It's a learning process to dial in those jumps. Who was your mentor? Who was kind of your first backcountry mentor?
Who was that? It was I would say my mentor was I'm trying to remember. It's such a long time ago. You know, when Eddie and I was writing for Jeenyus, Eddie Wall, we had Terje Dakides. She gave us a lot of tips and tricks. I mean, she taught us a lot about the backcountry, and also the photographer and the the filmer we were working with, Ian Reuter and Nathan Yan. Those guys were kind of the mentors, learning us, teaching us about all the variables in the mountains. And Kevin Jones, he was one of the first mentors.
touch on Kevin Jones and Terje Dakides here, because you would have been a young gun, and those two specifically were two of the most impactful snowboarders of all time. What was it like to extract knowledge from them and just be around them and watch their snowboarding live?
It was kind of crazy to be, we were rookies at the time, and to watch just their riding and their mentality to snowboarding, and just how big their names were at the time. It was really inspiring to see how they worked their way up to where they, to become superstars in snowboarding. And yeah, it was a lot to learn for rookies like me and Eddie.
those two specifically were rock stars. Like, they were on the cover of like huge magazines. Like, they were the pinnacle of, like, Kevin Jones is winning like these awards that aren't even involved in snowboarding, and same with Terje's on the cover of Rolling Stones and stuff like that, I think.
So they're like bigger than snowboarding, so that's why I'm saying it's kind of hard to explain how it felt. Because they were like, it's like if you see like your superhero and you're staying in the same house,
Well, they say never meet your heroes. Mons, on the last podcast, another absolute boss from the Kingdom of Norway, was saying that his hero was Torstein growing up. And he met Torstein, and Torstein exceeded his expectation as his hero. You mentioned a couple of your heroes there: Terje, Daniel Franck, Kevin Jones, Terje Dakides. Did they live up to the hype, or did any of them, you're like, damn, this person's sick, but he's an asshole?
No, they definitely lived up to the hype. And as I said, like the level of just riding with, Kevin Jones, just looking at him doing lines in Tahoe, and with his experience, and we didn't even know how to start getting into it, and you could just tell that he had so much experience, and there was so much knowledge for him that he could bring on to us.
Totally. I mean, I'm only imagining coming all the way from Norway and then getting thrown into the States and riding with somebody like Kevin Jones must have been surreal. But we kind of skipped a chapter there. Okay, I feel like for me, as like a North American Canadian snowboarder, the first time I've ever saw anything on you was Stand and Deliver in 2001. How did a long time ago. How did you break on the scene? How did you get your call?
It was a group. Well, it was me and 3 of my friends from Norway. We decided to after I was done with school to go to Mammoth Lakes or Mammoth Mountain. That was like kind of like the epicenter of snowboarding in the world at the time. And my dream was to turn pro, and of course just get better at snowboarding. So I won a lot of contests in Norway the year before, and saved up money from winning those contests and from working all fall. And I spent all the money, traveling, or to be able to afford to travel to Mammoth and live there for a whole season.
Oh, damn. You did a full season at Mammoth. That's dope.
Full season. Yeah. So after 2 months, all of my friends, they left because they were out of money. And I was out of money as well. But I decided I wanted to stay because nothing had really happened. So I wanted to stay for maybe 1 more month to see if anything was gonna happen.
But you're out of money.
I had to borrow some money from my parents.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, that if
And
you can, yes, I agree. If you can extract a couple loonies to make your
yeah.
trip worth it.
And so I was riding the park every day, you know, from when they open till when they close. And you know how you are, you know, as a kid, you just ride so much. And Dakides was filming for MacDog, and Nathan Yant, the filmer I was talking about, he was filming her. And Ian Reuter was shooting photos. And one day I can't remember if this was before I talked to them or after. I drifted too far on the biggest jump in Mammoth and landed on Nathan. And straight from the air, like my board hit his legs and almost broke his leg. And I, you know, rolled forward, hit my nose in the landing, and I was nose bleeding and trying to like trying to apologize. So that was kind of like the first meeting we had.
Very intimate.
Yeah, very intimate. And then Terje got hurt, and they just saw me riding in the park, and I know they weren't allowed to film someone else, you know, because back then it was 16 millimeter film, and it was really expensive. So Nathan took a chance and just filmed me for a couple of days when Terje was hurt, and I was able to get all of those shots I got in Mammoth. They were in the stand and deliver segment that I had. So it was kind of it went from nothing to filming for MacDog.
There was a lot to extract out of there.
Yeah, and
like
you know,
wow.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy because I was staying on the couch, 2 Swedish girls they were living there, and I was kind of just crashing on their couch for a month. And I started getting these phone calls from all the sponsors, you know, from Vans, DC, from a lot of different board companies, from nothing to being called up from the team managers of some of the biggest brands in snowboarding. So that was kind of a flip switch.
Okay, there's so much there. I want to talk on you hitting Nathan, and just like how that must have felt, because you must have been like, oh my God, I'm the new guy. I'm from Norway. I just hit this guy. I'm so sorry. Like, I also like hope I can maybe film for like his project.
Yeah.
And then you almost break his leg, but then as fate would have it, you end up filming for this movie. And then at the same time, you're starting to get all these phone calls from these like your dream snowboard companies.
Yeah.
Maybe just touch on like how you felt hitting Nathan, and then go right over to like which companies called you and which were you most hyped that.
Yeah. Well, hitting Nathan definitely I felt like an idiot. And
that's what I wanted to hear.
Yeah. Felt like a total moron, and like he's barely speaking English, you know, at the time, and I was trying to explain myself, and this was actually, I think it was like the first meeting we had, or the first time I actually talked to him. And
hello, my name's Andreas.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So and I didn't know he was filming for MacDog, but I found out later, and I could have ruined my chances.
If you knew he was filming for MacDog, you would have spun the other way.
Yeah, I would have spun frontside because I was going backside.
And did you just drift a lot on the back, like slushy jump Mammoth? I'm imagining.
I was just drifting a lot, and I think maybe he was, he was standing, could have been standing even further out to the side, so he was in the way. No.
Yeah, it's his fault. So which brands called, and which brands were you most hyped on?
Well, out of the boot, shoe brands, I was talking to DC, to 32, to Vans, which I ended up being my sponsor, and then a bunch of some different board companies. I ended up riding for Sims because I had a hookup with Sims in Norway at the time. So it was kind of a natural thing to go from the local sponsor to the international part of Sims. So
totally.
Yeah.
I mean, you were a part of Vans for a long, Sims not so long, but Vans, I mean, when I think of Andreas Wiig and like the Vans was like, you know, you had the signature boot, you were winning the Vans triple crowns, it's like you were on that brand and you were so like embedded in that world. And
yeah, it was always good to have Vans because they had my back no matter what throughout my whole career, you know, so it was cool to have a brand like that really supports you.
They're still like that, I swear to God. Like, not even just because I ride for them, it's like the team, if you get on Vans and you get in with that family, it's really like they do really back and support their riders more than just like, oh, you're injured this year, or even if you took like a year off to just figure out some shit because some crazy stuff came up. Like, I had a friend that like his dad passed away, and like the sympathy with the brand wasn't like, they were so sympathetic. Like, you need to take a year off, you need to do whatever, like, it's fine. We support you. Like, we know you love snowboarding. They also do a really good job of just signing the right athletes that are just snowboarding is their life and they're not going to not snowboard. Like look at yourself. Like, what a perfect pick, because you went from Andreas the Norwegian flying into Nathan Yant to like one of the best snowboarders of like ever. so good pick.
That's your words.
Yeah, well, let's be honest here.
It's always been a good relationship with Vans. And for clothing, my first clothing sponsor was Planet Earth, which I don't know, doesn't exist anymore, but brands come and go in snowboarding.
Planet Earth was so sick. When I was a kid, that was a really really good
their
look.
team, you know, with John Jackson and Matt Hammer.
Dude, those are White Balance, that standard movie. Matt Hammer's part. What is that? She's a Study, that song. Oh my God, I watched that part a lot. Let's touch on that. Those are two like local Mammoth kind of legends. Who stood out in Mammoth in the early 2000s to you, and who did you see kind of ripping around then? Because that Mammoth was like the hottest place in the world. That was the Hollywood of snowboarding back then.
No, definitely, you know, Danny Kass, of course, he was the the king of Mammoth, and June Mountain, and he was definitely everything. A big part of snowboarding, I felt like at the time, evolved around Danny Kass. So he wasn't only the local hero, he was a hero, you know, all over the world, and you got second at the Olympics, even first one, right?
I think
not the first one, but
no, maybe the second one. Ross Powers got first.
One. That's true. But it was him and just the whole Grenade crew.
Which you were a part of. Touch on that, dude. That Grenade crew was like insane. The debauchery, the style, everything about that brand. And then you end up being a part of that. Did you become friends with Danny and that whole crew down there? Were they nice and fun to hang out with, or were they kind of like?
Definitely they were. And I just felt like if you were in Mammoth and you were a snowboarder, you had to be involved with Grenade at the time because Grenade was just everywhere.
It was the coolest thing ever. That's why it was just like so amazing.
They were definitely living the brand at the time.
What were the parties sick back then? Did you guys like rage kind of hard in Mammoth?
Yeah, the parties were sick.
Because Mammoth is such like you go out, like you're so far in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
And then you have a huge group of the best snowboarders ever. Did you go, like, I'm imagining the
And
house
Mammoth
parties and
it wasn't like it is now. Like, well, I wasn't even, I think I was 19 or 20. I was still getting to the bar in Mammoth. It was kind of way up in the mountains, and yeah, it was different times.
anything goes. I remember that. Yeah. Did you have a cab 10 in your stand and deliver part?
Yeah.
Was anybody else doing cab 10s at that point? That trick kind of flew under the radar. I almost feel like even I didn't realize that. And then when I rewatched Stand and Deliver the other day, and I shared on the podcast, like I was like, I'm gonna do an episode with somebody that was in this movie, and only one person out of like 100 comments guessed Andreas, and I was like, yes, so because everyone's going with like the opener and ender, and they're saying and then like Kevin Jones, Cale Stevens, I'm like, nope, boom. And then you have this sneaky cab 1080.
I remember that was one of the last shots I got with Nathan, the filmer. That was like at one of those tricks you do all the way at the end of the day, you know. And I was doing some cab 9s, and then I was like, okay, I'm gonna try cab 10, and it's not like it is now. Like, people are doing cab 10s, you know, left and right, or not left and right, but they're just doing cab 10s all day. And like you were saying, it was different back then. If you did a cab 10, that was maybe something you did like once a year, or once in 2 years.
Was that the first one ever done? Like, who had done a cab 10 before?
I don't know. But I think that same year I was doing in a contest, or maybe it was the following year, in the Vans Triple Crown, I was doing cab 12s, and for some reason I stopped. You know, I landed, I think, 2 or 3 of them in a row, and I just stopped doing them. I should have kept on, because that would have been. It's weird how you're, you know, the level you adjust to where the level is, and I don't know.
That's amazing. I don't think a lot of people know that. That was a cab 12 back in the early 2000s. It's like, when I think of cab 12s, I think of like 2010. Yeah. And you're talking like 03.
Claiming it.
Damn. I know, you claim right ahead. Okay, let's jump over to video gangs here. My favorite snowboard video ever. Did an amazing part in that. I think that was your first, like, really, like, your break on, like, global part. And I mean, the intro, you snap homie's arm.
Yeah, that's right.
What happened there? You guys were like, let's arm wrestle. Like, take us through that story.
Well, that was one of the guys. He was working for Forum. I think he was maybe working with I don't know, some of the business part of Forum, and he was a really strong guy, and he wanted to arm wrestle me, and I didn't want to arm wrestle him. So I told him no many times. And then I remember Ian Reuter, he was like, you should go arm wrestle him. And they somehow convinced me to arm wrestle him, and I just had him, you know, his arm was all the way back there for a long time, and eventually kind of just gave out. And I remember Ian was standing next to me, and he was screaming, break his arm, and then it happened. And I felt really bad. Felt really bad, even though I'm laughing now, but I felt bad.
Like, after that clip came out, everybody in snowboarding was probably like, never fuck with Andreas.
Yeah.
If you were hanging out with the chicken,
I think that was, you know, I was hoping people were gonna remember the tricks in my part, but most people remember me breaking that guy's arm.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of. It was hard to overlook. You do another cab 10 in that video part that I remember well, and the back rodeo 9, which for at the time I just remember not ever seeing. I hadn't heard of your name really. Like, the stand and deliver video I watched a couple times, because I actually didn't own that one, But like you were saying about Subject Hawkinson, you owned that as a kid. You watched that 3 times a day. I watched video games like 1,000 billion times. I knew everyone's gloves, bindings, boots, boards, their sponsors, every single thing about every rider in that movie. Like I think I watched that movie the most out of any movie. So like when I look at your video part, it's like I remember the snapped arm, but I also remember the back rodeo 9 because not everybody was doing that shit at that time. Like how many back rodeo 9s had been done at that point? I don't feel like I'd seen one before.
Yeah, it was kind of not a lot of people doing those tricks back then.
No, it was very like cab 9, switchback 7. I remember Browner at me moving to Whistler and Chris Brown complaining that he didn't win the West Beach Classic with a switchback 7, and somebody did this heinous cab 9 and only held their grab for a short period of time. It's like at that time frame, there was a lot of people doing the 9s, but not everyone was holding the grabs that long.
Yeah.
And then there's like riders like you and UC that kind of came out, and David Benedict a little bit later that were like really holding on. Travis Parker that was like doing back rodeos and holding the grab the entire way.
I was always looking up to Travis Parker for, he was the master of back rodeos.
That's interesting to hear you say that. When I think of backside rodeos, yes, I think of Travis Parker. You go double back rodeo 9 and back rodeo 10. Robot Food, you're like hard to not give him the king title of that. But when I think of like consistency over an entire career, I would say that you're up there with the back rodeo king.
Thanks. Appreciate it. I've done some back rodeos, but I right now I don't think I would on an icy park jump.
Well, that's why you got to come back to Canada, dude. You got to come back to Whistler, and you got to buy a sled. We got to buy a sled off Geezer. You sold him for a great price.
I would love to try and to have one more season, and like you said, like just one more season. It's gonna be the best season ever.
That's how everybody. Even I did a podcast with Jeremy Jones not too long ago, and he kind of feels like the same kind of thing. He wants to still film that like one more video part. And it back to that Vans subject we were talking about earlier, like signing the right snowboarders. It's hard to pick them, but some snowboarders are just gonna want to do this forever. Like I'm imagining you right now, you're like still like, damn, I could film another part. I got kids.
But now I think I could do that trick, but I can't. But that's the difference.
People think of Andreas Wiig and think of like every trick spin direction of every way. Like everyone thinks you can spin in every direction, especially if they watched your video parts closely. Was there ever kind of one area where you're like, oh man, I can't spin this direction, or I'm really weak in this one area?
Well, when I was growing up and when I was learning, I felt like, but I was it was just different because now you can, some of the kids maybe do a backside 3, and before they can do a frontside 3, they'll do a backside double cork 1080, So I felt like back then it was like if you did a 360, you had to do the 360 all different ways before you started doing 540s, and then you did all the 540s, and then you did all the 7s, and then eventually you started doing all the 9s, and it was just kind of a different way to go about it.
No, that's the best and the smartest way, because then you're laying a foundation of solid concrete on the most important and the fundamentals, and having that down is so important. When I used to coach at camp, I'd always tell my kids, like, don't skip the front 180. They could front 3, but they couldn't front 180. And I'm like, you're going to be so bummed when eventually you're trying to figure out the front 9 or something like that. And really every trick is just a combination of a couple tricks, and understanding that a cab 7 is just a half cab with a back five. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like when you start breaking down tricks like that, everything becomes so much easier. Like switchback fives is just a switchback one and then a front three. So as soon as you get the switchback one over, you just grab that like you're doing a front three Indy.
That seems easy.
Yeah, that's a really good way to break it down. What was video games your favorite part you ever filmed? Just like the most it's kind of like your break onto the scene, or what video part were you most proud of?
I don't know. I was stoked on video games. Since it's just such a long time ago, and it was one, maybe like you said, like my first major video part in a big movie. So I would maybe go for video games, or I don't know. I'm trying to remember all the different parts now.
Well, you had like 20 of them, so video games was pretty special though, to come on the scene and be surrounded with that group of riders too. You got guys like Devin Walsh, you got Chris Duffy, you got Lowry's part, you have Eddie Wall and Kevin Jones in there. It's like you got a clip of Nate Bozung. It's like that whole video was like, that video was so hype. Like when it came out, like the group of riders that were in that movie were like the people that were moving the needle at that point. And like you have like a breakout part there, and then this other guy from Europe shows up, like Lowry, and Lowry's part is like no one has ever heard of Lowry before, and then he's just like absolutely destroying it. Yeah, that was a special movie. Yet again, it was a special movie because it's the one I watched the most. So to me, I hold it in high regard. But like I can only imagine for yourself, like filming your first full-length video part and then being in video gangs must have been crazy.
On the other on the other side of my career, the Shredbots movie, the first one that came out, I was also stoked on that I was able to be that old and still do all those tricks.
Are you talking about like the backside triple first try?
Yeah, for example. That's like the only one I've done. I only did one.
And you did one, and it was first try.
One, it was first try, and then now I regret. Okay, I should have tried I should have tried at least another one while I was at it.
No, like you were saying about the Cab 12 that you did all those years ago. You only do one or two, and then you just don't do them again. That's that's your move. That's what every pro used to do back then. You know, you get like what, like Travis Parker. Do you really think he did the backside rodeo 1080 5 times? No, he did it the one time, and he's just out.
One time. That's it.
Derelictica. You follow it up. Derelictica. You follow it up with a really heavy part. Again, what was your favorite trick you filmed in that part, if you remember? I'm curious because there's a lot of good.
I think that front 7 nose. I don't know if you remember, but
I remember. With the red jacket.
To be honest, I think it was supposed to be a front 5, and I was like, okay, there goes the land. Okay, I'm still spinning, and the landing isn't here yet, and I kept on holding to the nose, and it's one of those, sometimes it just works out, and I came around, and I remember a lot of people told me that was the trick they liked the most, and I think that was the trick I liked the most myself as well.
Hey, accidents happen. That's the most important thing about, I'm imagining a lot of the cab 7s that were done in the backcountry and switchback 7s like in that time frame were just switchback 5s where pros had great air awareness and we're just like, well, I'm over rotating. I went too big. I might as well just float this into a cab 7. And you can kind of see, but some of those shots, like Gigi, I felt like was really good at, like, he had a couple front 5s back in the day when he started getting into riding in Alaska a lot. and he would get bucked and like kind of do a really corked front 3 and then turn it into a front 5. And it's like, nobody's mad at you, Gigi. Just keep doing that. Because it looks, to me, it's like that you're just kind of, your air awareness is so dialed that if you can improv when you are screwing up and get a clip, it's like, damn.
Yeah, you'll take it.
Yeah. Stepchild. Why were you on a stepchild board in this movie? And you never ended up like really staying on them for too long.
Because there was a short period of time where I didn't have a board sponsor, and Sean Johnson was the director of the movie, and he asked me if I wanted to try out the stepchild boards, and I really liked them. And also, it was cool to support such a cool brand. It was at the time it was a really small snowboard brand. And then eventually it grew bigger, but it just felt good to ride on a stepchild board.
Maybe touch on Sean Johnson. What was he like?
He was really cool. He was really cool. Like, he was one of those guys that when some new riders came into the movie, he was really welcoming, and he was making sure that all the rookies felt like they were included in the mix. So that was one of his strengths, that he was really taking care of us, all the young guys. And yeah, he was he had his heart in it.
Do you think that had you heard that name before you started filming for Derelictica and video, or no, Derelictica?
Yeah. I've heard of him from the whiskey movies.
Nice.
Yeah.
Sick. That's cool. So like, did you watch the whiskey movies growing up at all, or did, like, when you were in Mammoth, someone threw it in?
Maybe not when I was a kid in Norway, but I can't remember. I think maybe because we watched pretty much every movie, and if I didn't have the movie, some of my friends would have the movie. So yeah, so I definitely watched it.
That is the best, when you have a community of loyal snowboarders, and you and all your homies buy a bunch of different movies, and then collectively you own like all the movies, and then you can kind of shuffle them around when you kind of get bored of watching them. My friend Jesse Walker had all of the videos. Like, he would he'd buy 90% of the snowboard videos every year, and then I was just like, I would buy like 2, and he would buy, like, at the end of like 2010, there was like a lot of videos coming out. 2006, you know what I mean? There was like 20 videos coming out, and he would buy all of them, and we'd watch them all. We'd watch them all a couple times. Some of them, not as much as, video gangs.
That was back then when people, they could actually, it was possible to make money just from selling the movie from the price of the DVDs, even before that, the VHS.
European park jumpers. Who are some of your favorite? To me, when I look at like the European park jumpers, I'm like, that were moving into the scene alongside you, I thought the best style. Like, I look at Pavo and like Ika and Arrow and Larry and yourself and Heikki, and like this whole group.
Definitely all the Finnish guys were unreal on park jumps and also in the backcountry, but they were so dialed.
Who are some of your favorites? Just like some names.
I was riding a lot with Lowry, so he was definitely a favorite, and he had his sick, unique style. And besides Lowry, Heikki, he was so good, not just only on the jumps, but in the pipe, on the quarter pipe. Yeah, he was definitely one of the best riders in the world, in my eyes, at the time.
I saw that when I was young. I don't think there's a lot of kids that know how exceptionally talented he was, because it's no joke to be that good at pipe, to go to like the Arctic Challenge and be like one of the top contenders, but also be able to like ride rails, jump, park. Like he was an all-terrain beast.
He was.
Like, and the hip shots he was getting during that era was just insane. Like,
yeah.
And he had a lot of injuries he had to overcome too, like, which is unfortunate. Or I think he would have been he would have been like a Mickle Bang floating around right now still. That's like, oh yeah, I still win everything because I was so good.
Yeah. Like Eero Etla, he was definitely, he's still floating around doing insane tricks, and he doesn't get older.
He rides so much steel and rails, it's crazy. I guess maybe we could follow that up with why did you never get into rails? Why did Andreas Wiig never go like, I want to be a rail guy? Derelictica, you had a nice gap 450 270.
I did some rails. I don't know, it was just it just wasn't something I wanted to do that much. I wanted to ride the rails in the park, and but I for me personally, I wanted to snowboard in the backcountry and in parks. So I think it was just that it wasn't that appealing to me personally, and probably I would have gotten hurt as well.
Let me follow that up with. I feel like team managers back then, not all, but some, would really try to dictate their team's careers. Whether it's like telling you what to wear, how to market yourself, you should ride more pipe, you should ride less pipe, you should ride jumps, you should change your stance, you should change your bindings. Did you ever have any interesting conversations with people at brands or team managers trying to help you navigate your career? And were they weird?
yeah. Well, it was back, when I remember it was, when JP Walker, he was like the god in snowboarding for some years, and everybody, had looked like they was those times. Everybody wanted to look like JP Walker, but not everybody had that kind of a riding style as he did, so it wasn't like a good fit. But I remember there were times in snowboarding when the team managers and the whole industry was really image driven, and they were super obsessed about that. It wasn't only enough to be yourself, you had to like try to be this I don't know, like to create an image. But I feel like for me, I just wanted, I wasn't that kind of guy, so I just I guess I didn't fit into that box, if you can say that.
Do you feel that motivated you to be better than ever, and kind of so your riding would be so good that you wouldn't have to fake be this like video game character or whatever? You're like, no, I'm just gonna snowboard and you just leave me alone.
I guess that was definitely a motivation, a factor to just let the riding speak for itself.
Yeah, I would say you did a really good job.
I remember one guy that was working for, I think he was working for, one guy that was working for Forum mentioned that he didn't think that I was that marketable. And I remember that I was thinking about that quite a lot. And at the time it was like you wanted to be, it was like, should I try to be someone else so it's a better fit for the sponsor, or is it better just to be the guy from Norway that is not a gangster? But I remember, to be honest, that if you, as a snowboarder, if someone says that you're not marketable, it doesn't feel good, But I feel like I was marketable for a different for a different audience.
Did you feel like you had to like tell that to him? Like, what was your response when he said that to you?
He didn't tell me directly, but I just heard it from someone else.
Oh,
so my response was kind of like the opposite way, that I just wanted to, just be myself, and I felt like that was really cool about then David Benedek and that whole crew, that they kind of switched the snowboarding from being image driven to being more like the rider, or focus on the riding and the fun of snowboarding, I feel like. But I might be wrong.
No, you're not wrong at all. I
Yeah.
think that whole crew, UC, Travis, Bobby, David, that crew really helped tell people that you don't have to be a JP Walker or a Mark Frank Montoya or whatever. But like, and there's nothing wrong with being a Mark Frank or a JP, but it's healthy to have a snowboard community that is accepting of people just not being that too at all.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because we're all from different backgrounds and stuff that. What brings us together is snowboarding. And I kind of went through a couple of phases in my life which were like completely dictated by like, I rode for Tech 9, and eventually it like gets into your head. You're like, I ride for Tech 9, and I was younger. I was 19. I'm smoking weed, listening to rap. And you can see where that drags young teenage minds. Yeah. And all I'm going to say about that is it might not be the worst to have people like David Benedict and UC and you helping people just be like, yo, you can just be a kid that likes snowboarding. Yeah. And it's a funny, goofy thing that we do, because snowboarding is it's kind of just hilarious. You know what I mean? Yeah. You're flipping around on a snowboard and you dress up in a costume.
So I think the Robot Food guys did a good job.
Yeah. Like, what did you think about those Robot Food movies? Like you were filming for different things, but like, just touch on those films when they came out, because you would have been pro during that time, which is an interesting dynamic to like look at those films. You're not a part of them. Was there any part of you that would be like, damn, I wish I was in Robot Food?
At the time, I feel like among the kids, maybe the Robot Food movies were the most popular at the time when they came out. So, and also like watching the movies, and it looked like that they just had so much fun on all those trips, and we did as well. So it just, maybe we did have a lot of fun, filming for other movies, but maybe it wasn't like in the movie. Like some other snowboard videos were more serious, focusing on like the bigger tricks, when the Robot Food movies had more of a mix and made snowboarding look way more fun.
Was there anybody in snowboarding that you just didn't get along with, that you like went on a trip with when you were younger and you're like, wow, we do not click, and I really hope I never get to film with you again?
Maybe I should mention some names that maybe I don't think they're going to watch this podcast.
I just think that
I came along. I mean, I was able to have a good relationship with all the other riders. But of course, I mean, sometimes you were put in a group with some riders that you didn't necessarily click with, and we'll leave it at
that. Well, one thing I'd like to just add there is, Andreas, I think I can speak for all of snowboarding, but we're happy that you maintain just being Andreas, because I think that it was just like, you just had video parts come out high level, and there was no like, I'm trying to be anything but Andreas. And I think that helped your snowboarding. I think it helped separate you from everybody else who might have been trying to be something. It just looked like you wore good baggy snowboard outfits and then did good tricks. And then some people needed to wear like, gold chains and stuff like that. And it's just like, I don't know. the best thing about snowboarding is there's a place in snowboarding for every single type of snowboarding and snowboarder.
That's what I like. I want snowboarding to be a place for everybody that wants to have fun on the snowboard. You know, basically, it's just a snowboard. You know, like we talked about, it's just people trying to have fun on this stick, riding around on the hill.
Yes, that's exactly what it is. Okay, let's quickly touch base on your contests here. More specifically, like what was it? How many X Games medals did you go to? You didn't ever go to the Olympics, did you? No.
No, 5 medals in X Games. Yeah.
Okay, 5 X Games medals, and I mean, a long time. Like you were in X Games for a while there. What was it like to ride with people like, you know, you did X Games with UC, you did X Games with Sean White, you did X Games with Danny Kass, like,
and Travis Rice.
Yeah, and Travis. Yeah. You're like,
it's crazy. I haven't mentioned Travis Rice yet, but he's, you know, he's also of course a rider I look up to, like all the rest of us.
Yeah, and you know what? Similar to Travis Rice, I think that Travis also just let his riding do the talking.
Yeah,
like he wasn't trying to be a character or anything like that. He was like, I'm gonna go to Super Park and I'm gonna backside rodeo this massive hip, and I'm not gonna be anybody but Travis Rice.
I remember because I was there at the Super Park when he was doing those, and that was exactly, you know, a couple of weeks after I filmed those clips for MacDog in Stand and Deliver. So it was that same year, and Travis, that was like his breakthrough. And I remember just watching him ride before. He was like, you know, nobody knew who he was at the time. So it's kind of crazy to think about it now. 2 rookies in Mammoth.
Let maybe quickly touch on that. We'll jump back to your contests really quickly here. But Super Park, you attended a couple of those. You're gathering the best snowboarders in the entire world, building the most progressive park features of all time. Who is standing out at those events back then?
Well, first of all, Travis. in you know, the one in Mammoth was the first one I went to, and I felt like a lot of times rookies would stand out because they wanted it the most, because that was like their window towards the sponsors, and it was like their time to shine, while maybe the more established riders didn't necessarily have to hit those big jumps and do crazy tricks. So I think Super Park was a really, you know, cool thing it was like a place that young talents could show their talents.
Do you remember anybody other than Travis that was kind of standing out? Do you remember a couple of these rookies?
Yeah, I remember, you know, Eddie Wall. Yeah, he would always stand out, especially on the rails, but also on the jumps. So Eddie Wall was the man.
Eddie Wall is the man.
He is the man. He was and is the man.
Yeah, totally. He was on Jeenyus too. That was we kind of skipped that chapter quickly. Maybe just touch on what it was like to be on Jeenyus with that crew. Who was riding for Jeenyus, and what was it like?
On the main team for Jeenyus, it was only 4 riders, and it was Eddie Wall, Terje, Kevin Jones, and myself. And it felt, you know, unique to be on the team with Terje and Kevin Jones at the time. Like we talked about, like they were bigger than snowboarding, and it felt like a, you know, unique opportunity to
So, like, Kevin Jones just calls you up and is like, yo, what up? It's KJ. you probably know me.
When, because after the first season I was in Mammoth, I had to go to the army in Norway for half a year.
What?
And there's randomly one evening when I was in the army, and we were, it was like I can't remember what we were doing, and my phone called, and I thought maybe it's my mom or my dad, and it was JP Walker. And it was like, yo, what's up, JP Walker? And he called me to see if I wanted to ride for a special blend. And yeah, that was at the time when I was still, not in the snowboarding pro world. And that was really crazy to me, like he was such a big hero, and now he's calling my phone in Norway. So I remember that was like a moment that stood out.
Yeah, there's definitely no quick text messages or emails back then. It's like JP Walker calls you and he's like, yo, what up? It's the Don.
Yeah.
It's JP. And you're like, oh, that must have been insane. Who is it? Your mom's like, there's a phone call for you. Who is it? This guy named JP Walker? You're like, what?
Yeah. They're like, who?
Oh my God. Why did you say no to Special Blend?
Well,
Blend was sick.
I didn't say, I said yes, because I think maybe it was the year after, but it was after I was done riding for Planet Earth, I started riding for Special Blend when I was riding for Jeenyus.
Oh, okay. I got it confused with the time era.
Yeah, the times it's a little confusing. It's such a long time ago. No, so I can't remember if I rode for, or I think as soon as my contract was up with Planet Earth, I started riding for Special Blend.
There you go. The blend was sick too. Was Brian Thien still on Special Blend?
Yeah.
Yes. That's so sick to be on a team with Brian Thien.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Really, that's rad. We did skip over the contesting though. I want to hear what it was like to maybe take us through one of your first major contests.
Well, I feel like my first major contest was the Vans Triple Crown in Breckenridge, where I got second, and that second place got me into the X Games only a month later. And so I went to my first X Games, and I ended up getting third behind Sean White was number one, Danny Kass, and then that's a good podium. At least with those two guys at the time. So that was like my first contest breakthrough, to get a podium at X Games, the first X Games I was in.
That's amazing, with Danny Kass and Sean White.
Yeah.
That's sick. How much money are we talking? You get third at X Games back then. You said you get second at the Vans Triple Crown. How much dough did you just make?
I can't remember. I can't remember how much you got for a third place. Maybe 15 grand.
Jesus.
Maybe 20. Yeah.
How much is the most you've ever won?
The most? Well, the most was what, when you include all the incentives and all that. But
yeah, let's tally that up. What does that look like?
Maybe like close to 100 grand.
Damn.
Yeah.
And what was your biggest contract year look like, if you don't mind me asking, because it's so long ago? Like, what was your biggest contract you've ever signed?
Year was I think it was 2008, maybe. Yeah. That's when I peaked.
And who was that with? Was that with Forum?
That was with when I was riding for Nitro.
No way.
Yeah.
Damn, Nitro.
6 years on Nitro.
I remember.
Yeah.
What the Wiig board. I remember how they used to write your last name. It was like this black text font, and it had like this spiky J.
Yeah.
Anyways, I remember that logo. Yeah. What was the contract? 6 years with Nitro. Did you get a 6-year contract?
No, it was 2-3 year contracts.
3-year contract
Yeah.
for how much a year?
I can't exactly remember, but it was maybe.
Let's talk cheddar biscuits here.
I think it was maybe around 100.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well deserved. At least I was hoping at least 100K.
Yeah. You're hoping.
Yeah. If Andreas Wiig wasn't making 100K back then, like, dude, we just went through like accidentally doing cab 12s and not even realizing you were doing the most progressive trick in the entire world, filming cab 10s, backside rodeo 9s, being on the podium with Sean and Danny. It's like somebody needed to recognize that Andreas Wiig was on one, and we're stoked that with the homies at Nitro for realizing that.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
That is amazing. Mac Dog, follow me around. Take us through that video part. One trick specifically that we have to talk about the entire day. But
well, I should have maybe mentioned follow me around when we talked about it. Talked about the video parts earlier, because that's definitely one of the ones that stand out. Maybe could be the one that stands out the most. Well, there's talking about maybe the trick off of the DCP cliff.
Take us through the trick. Okay, the DCP clip. What trick you do, the day, who was there?
Yeah.
Just take us through. I want to hear in your own words what this day was kind of like and why the hell you did that.
It was well, but not people outside of snowboarding. They don't know that you have to wake up hella early to go snowboarding. But that day we woke up, I think, around 3:30. So 3:30 wake up call, met up at the parking lot at 4:30, which was like an hour away. We stayed in Mammoth, so we had to drive for 1 hour to the parking lot in Sonora Pass. And so we sledded up there basically in dark, and then started preparing the jump, the small jump on top of the cliff. And I remember just standing on top of it, and it was like 6 o'clock in the morning or something. And we were all ready, and we were just waiting for the sun to hit the landing. So that was early. And it was at the times when there was, a lot of different crews in snowboarding and skiing crews that you had to wake up and race people to be like in Whistler, to be the first crew to show up. And I'd been thinking about that trick, if it was possible to do it off of a cliff, but I'd never, hadn't tried it. I think maybe I tried it at the Half Dome cliff in Tahoe once or twice, but I'd never tried it at the DCP cliff. And so it was the first try, so I had to visualize how long I was going to be in the air. And I think I was in the air longer than I expected. So I remember, because of as you know, when you hit a cliff, you have to spin slow, otherwise you're gonna get punished. So I was there with Filippo Crater, the brother of Giacomo, and I didn't even tell him what I was going to try, because I didn't want to jinx it. So the first time I tried it, I tried a back rodeo 7 off of it, and somehow landed.
Wait, that was first try?
Yeah, it was first try.
Oh my God, I love
this.
First
try, and I think also I went quite a bit bigger than I was expecting. But luckily I was spinning slow, so I had time to. But you can tell I'm opening up at the end, and hopefully, and luckily I didn't over rotate.
Back Rodeo 9.
That would have been sick as well.
Were you on cloud 9 when you were riding away?
Yeah.
Tell me, like, what
Or
was
I
going?
think it was kind of in. I was like, what really just happened? Did I just land my first try?
Who was the filmer?
Would have been cool to land a back 3 or front 3 or whatever, but yeah.
Like, your filmer must have been losing his mind.
Yeah, the filmer was Brad Kramer. He was the guy who was directing the Mammoth movies at the time, and he was like the head of the filmers, and he was stoked.
Were you like,
cool.
Did you get, and then, sorry, you said that what was the other rider's name? I'm only imagining him at the top watching you just disappear doing a back rodeo 7, being like, did he catch his heel edge, or was he trying to do a back rodeo off?
Because I was going, on that cliff, you're going kind of slow, so it's kind of easy to catch your heel edge on the way out. So I don't know what he was thinking, but I remember he was like that, but that was crazy. Andreas,
I would not want to be going next after that. It's like, what you gonna try? You're like, I hope I land this cab 5. And even still, a cab 5 on the DCP cliff would be insane. Like, there's not a lot of tricks to have gone down on that thing.
No,
I
don't know if even people hit that much anymore. I feel like people or riders are not that into cliffs anymore. As it used to be more focus on the people were hitting more cliffs back in the days. Maybe that's, I don't know.
But yeah, I mean, I definitely feel there's a smaller amount of people riding and filming in the backcountry than back then. Yeah. But I also feel like that could be due to a lot of things. And I mean, financial support is another thing. It's like when you say like a nitro contract for one of the best at 100K, it's like even the guys that weren't that good were still getting like 30K, 40K contracts. Yeah. Now, if you get a $12,000, if you get $1,000 a month now, you are like a legit pro.
Yeah, then you're stoked.
And you're stoked. And you know how much a snowmobile costs right now? About 22 grand.
Yeah.
And then you have to get one every couple of years, because the last thing you want to be doing is stranded with an old sled in the like when the clouds roll in, and you got to buy a truck, and then the gas and the avalanche course and all this. It's just so expensive. So that might be why we see less people than before in the backcountry. But I feel like it'll all come full circle. We'll get a rebound in this economy, hopefully, and then all those people who Googled where to put my money and, landed on Shiba Inu or Bitcoin, just make a bunch of money, and we get a bunch of crazy people in the backcountry.
Yeah. But that's what I was saying. Like the Man Boys and all you guys up in Whistler, you're keeping the cliff jumping alive.
We're just trying to look like Andreas, man. Belzil is still just trying to back rodeo off of everything.
He's doing a great job at it.
I saw him actually last year. We filmed for the King Snow movie.
Yeah.
And we were on the Hollywood step down, and which has been absolutely destroyed. And Matt was on top. Same kind of scenario. You got to rush out there. It's morning light. It's 2 hours away.
Yeah.
And Belzil pats this thing down, and he is moving quick. And Bo and Sean Miskimen are setting up the other step down, and it's me and Matt on this thing. And Matt wins the Rosham, and he's going first.
Yeah.
And Matt goes in and does, and I'm just like, oh, I think he's gonna. And same thing, probably similar scenario to DCP cliff, minus the fact it's not the DCP cliff. Matt's like, doesn't tell me what trick he's gonna do, and then he just launches off it, and I just see him go back rodeo 7 nose grab, and I'm just like. Yeah. I'm like, or tail. And I'm like, oh my, watching that from the top, you're like, oh my, it is the craziest thing to watch your friend go backside rodeo off of a cliff. So I'm only imagining what that looked like from your homie's angle when you go up that DCP cliff, which is even bigger. Like, oh no, Andreas, don't do it.
We should call Filippo and ask him.
Yeah, we should.
If he can remember.
Touching on signing with Forum, when you signed with them, did you feel like there was an added amount of pressure joining this new wave of Forum riders? Did you guys, have a couple meetings and you guys were like, okay, we got to be the best in the world? Because those Forum movies, similar to the movies before, like The Resistance and True Life, and even that for that matter, like Fuck It, That's It, That's All, Vacation, etc. Like you could see that there was still the progression aspect within the Forum community. Did you feel that pressure when you were on Forum to do your best?
Yeah, you definitely felt the pressure.
Oh no, I hate that feeling.
It was like, okay, now I'm writing for Forum, I'm filming for a Forum movie. They only want what, the best of what you can deliver. And I feel like everybody on the team felt the same pressure, that we had to work as hard as we could all season to get those shots and to push our limits. And that was kind of in the Forum DNA, that you had to bring, or to keep it going from the Forum 8,
Totally.
Legendary Forum 8. They kind of set the standards for how it's supposed to be done when it comes to filming video parts. So I feel like when we were filming the Forum movie, like that, the same with the MacDog, the other MacDog movies, that you knew the standards were high. So maybe if you got your trick like almost perfect, you would go back up and do it again until you got it perfect.
That's one way to get good, though. That's one way to get really good. And who is your favorite Forum 8 rider?
As I said, Peter Line is definitely one that stands out.
Beyond JP.
I think all of the guys.
Yeah, that's a hard one. Sorry for even asking you that one.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let me ask you this. Who is your favorite on the new Forum crew? Like when you're filming for Vacation, I think that's when you and Pat were kind of hurt, but like who were the riders on the crew at that point that you were like, I really like this guy's snowboarding?
Yeah, I really like Pat's snowboarding, since he was able to do, he had, really powerful style, and he was able to ride it all. He's, really good in the backcountry, lines, jumps, rails, even pipe. So he could ride it all.
Yeah, I mean, Pat Moore is, I did a podcast with fellow Forum snowboarder Austin Sweeten.
Yeah.
And he was kind of the park jump guinea pig for when he was filming with the Forum movies with you guys. And I asked him who the GOAT is, and he said Pat Moore. I thought that was pretty sick, because Pat's been in the game for so long, and you look at even when he was on Red Bull there and filming with like Travis and his Forum parts, and then his street parts and his X Games. Sometimes I forget just how legendary Pat's career has been. Like, he is such a boss. So I too am a big fan.
I've followed his career from when he was 16, when he was joining it, when I was riding for Jeenyus, and we were filming on doing the same park shoots in Tahoe, and he was a part of the Young Bloods. So so that's such a long time ago, and he was killing it even back then.
What are your thoughts on Forum coming back
now?
Yeah,
I think it's cool, especially with with the owners behind it, and then it's going to be they're gonna, when you have snowboarders, some of the best snowboarders, the goats in the old timers, then it's gonna be in the best hands. And with Dogger, and it's gonna be it's a great I think they're gonna have a great start, and I think they're gonna have it's such a strong name for them. The Forum is still such a strong name in snowboarding that if they're doing it right, it's gonna be it's gonna do well, I think.
I agree. I think it'll do really well. Who's one rider that you would suggest they put on Forum? Like, who's somebody that you like out of anybody right now, you could put them on Forum? Who would you put on there?
I would put on Mons for Iceland.
I just did a podcast. Here's my prediction for Mons. I'm going to be so honest right now. I think a lot of people don't care because he's been fully a contest kid forever. At least the people in the core snowboarding world, which Forum would obviously try to market to. I think Mons is going to do contests for a couple more years, absolutely destroy it, and then live his dream and go film in the backcountry and blow people's minds, because his style is so good and he is such a good snowboarder. I just think that the really, really big core market doesn't follow Mons and know just how freakishly talented this kid is. And he's nice, and he's hardworking, and he's got morals. And like he's the package deal. I think that Forum, if they continue to grow slowly, and he does like the one video part to show people that he can hang, which he can, I think he could be a big contender for Forum, for sure.
For sure.
For sure.
There's also room, that some riders can do both. I know it's hard, but it's possible to film, if you're that good as, Mons is, that it's possible to focus on the contests until the spring, and then film the video part, starting in March. That's usually when people get, most of their shots anyways.
Totally. And he did mention that Mikey Cicerelli, who's a big upcoming Burton kid here in Whistler, had reached out to Mons and said that if he wanted to come to Whistler, they could link up. I mean, if Mons came to Whistler, I would go out with him. Like, the kid is sick. Yeah. I've been a big fan forever. I've known him for a long time. That was cool to hear from you that that's one of the riders you would throw on there. Is there anybody else?
I'm trying to think. Do you have any
what about yourself? What if
maybe a comeback for Eddie Wall?
Hey, what about if you got, JP called you to ride for Blend? What if JP goes back to Forum and you get another call from JP like, what up, dude? Yeah. Let's do this.
Yeah. Is it the 1st of April or what's no, I don't think that's gonna
happen. Okay. Triple Cork. You're out there with Torstein. You kind of get to work with the future of snowboarding in a sense. I mean, Torstein is so unbelievably good. It's almost like one of those things that unless you actually get to snowboard with him live, you kind of just don't even understand how good he is. I've had the ability to go on snowboard trips with him, watch him ride handrails, watch him in his peak element in the park, and it's like he just has something that a lot of people don't. You go into the backcountry with him and you build the jump and you get this kind of triple idea in your head. Kind of take us through filming with Torstein and him helping you progress your riding to the next level.
Yeah, because I was 33 years old when I was doing that triple cork. So it was cool to ride with Torstein at the time. He was, he's 6 years, I think, younger than I am. And still, he was like on his peak, and to ride with him, as like you said, like it's hard to explain how good it is, and he would inspire me to just keep on pushing myself. And that was cool. When we built that jump, we built it specifically to try triple corks, or not to try, to, well, at least for Torstein to do triple corks. For me to try triple cork. And so I was lucky to have like the best mentor when it comes to triple corks. Well, the first guy that ever did a triple cork in the world was the guy I was riding with. And so yeah, I remember he was kind of navigating me, and like he was giving me these pointers to how to think when I was going to do a triple cork, and somehow it worked out.
What was the pointer? Grab and hold?
Well, like we talked about earlier, that you have to break it down. So I was thinking, okay, I'm going to do because I'd done a lot of backside double corks, and if I could do, I had to know where in the air I was finished with the backside double cork, and then it's just after the backside double cork, just do a little small cork, and then that's it.
That's it, folks.
That's it. Just double cork.
Yeah.
Think double cork. Be finished with double cork at some point in the air, and then the last one goes quick.
let me guess how you do a quad cork. So you do the triple cork.
Yeah.
You know where you are.
It's kind of hard to wrap my mind around it, actually. But I guess if you've done like 1,000 triple corks, then maybe it falls into place.
And that triple cork was first try too.
Yeah.
So what like I love the first try. I'm happy that works out for you. I've tried.
So on that jump, I did a backside double cork, landed it. Well, I tried the jump with the backside double cork. So that was the first try. Then Torstein did a frontside double cork, and he landed. And I did a backside double cork. No, that backside triple cork, and I landed my first one. And then Torstein did a frontside triple cork, and he landed. First try. So it was like 4 tries, 4 tricks.
And then you guys are just eating lunch on your snowmobiles. Yeah. Like, damn, we are so good, and definitely getting re-signed next year. You were.
Well, that wasn't the normal.
No,
it wasn't a normal day.
You were in like the boom of corking, double corking, and triple corking. I feel now it's similar to what we were talking about earlier. Like, you had this added pressure. You felt like maybe to, be somebody that you're not. I feel like everybody, even the people that didn't want to be double corkers, everybody in like the 2010 to 14 era would just like, you would film your video part. It would be the end of the year in Whistler, and you'd be like, I have to do a double cork. It's exactly. Like everybody was just like,
time is running out.
Oh yeah, totally. Time's running out. You're like Ika, Arrow, Benji, you, Torstein, anybody who rode POW at that time was like, end of the season, got to get my double cork. Yeah. Which for me, I was always like, oh damn, like coming up, I was like, got to get my double cork, and just like, now I'm like, I don't even think that in my head anymore. I'm like, I go to a feature, I go to whatever, and then I try to ride it as I want to. Yeah. And
that's cool how the filming part of snowboarding has kind of moved away from the double cork, triple cork pressure that was going
it's just
on
like
for a while.
That was legit pressure. I'm imagining if you were a rider that was pro and your contract was coming up, and you were sitting on a bunch of 5s and a back 7 and a front 7, you're like, I'm gonna get cut.
And then the director of the movie is like, we gotta get some double corks. I don't see, we don't have any. It's March and we don't have any double corks yet.
Yes, Totally. Okay, so two more kind of chapters here. Awesome.
Yeah.
You start awesome with Torstein. You get people like Craig McMorris, Mark McMorris behind it.
Yeah.
Why did you start this company, and why is it, where is it, and why is it gone?
We started it because we kind of saw a gap in the market with those belts. We start, those stretch belts. No one made them. We found like a climbing belt that was kind of the same, but not really. And so we thought, there was a big market for those belts in snowboarding and other sports, and it was, but it was maybe too easy to copy. So we came out with the belts. Didn't take long before all the other big brands made them. And what's crazy now is that before we produced those belts, I'd never seen them anywhere, and now you can go to H&M and you will see them. So if we could take a patent on it, we would have been rich.
So what do you think that was the downfall, is that you guys made these stretchy belts and then every other company could easily mass produce them too, and then that was kind of the downfall of it? Or
I think the downfall was that the company was just mismanaged by some guys that came in and ran the company and didn't do it well, and just ordered way too much, and it was like the business side of it that didn't work out. But I think the marketing, the hype we had for a while, it should have still been here, and it's sad that it didn't go as we planned, but it's risky to start your own business.
Totally. What was one of your biggest takeaways from starting that venture?
Well, the biggest takeaway is that it's smart to own a small part of something big rather than to own a big part of something small. So maybe to not put that much money into a project. But I think as a pro snowboarder, you're used to taking risks, and I've heard about a lot of other athletes that they put all their money into these projects, and it could go well, but it could also go bad. And so that's the main takeaway for my part.
I'm wondering,
now it's history. So
there's been a lot of companies like that, especially in snowboarding. Maybe almost too many. But you look at like the Block Hotel with Franck. You look at like Grenade. You look at Stepchild. There's so many. Mission 6. I mean, you could go on all day. Swag outerwear, West Beach. It's like there's so many companies. That are so sick, that start out. They have a good vision, and
the team. Everything is good.
Yeah, you're almost like surprised to see some of these companies fold. Like when I saw Stepchild kind of just disappearing, you're like, whoa, like how is this happening? Because Stepchild was so big. Or maybe Nomis is even the best example in all of snowboard history. Is like they were nothing, and within 2 years they were one of the fastest growing action sports brands. And then Simone, who I had on the podcast, is like gets absolutely nothing from them, and is building homes in Vancouver Island with his brother. And I'm imagining it's the best time of their life. I mean, let's be honest. You're working with your brother, you're working working with your hands, you're accomplishing like rad tasks every day. The level of fulfillment from that job is no joke. But like even still, Simone Chamberlain owning Nomis should be walking away with like that guy should be retired. Everybody in my high school was wearing Nomis clothes. Like the fact he got nothing, and it's just like heartbreaking sometimes how much us snowboarders put into stuff, and then like how little we walk away with sometimes. But I mean, like you said, I guess that we snowboarders like to navigate risks, and sometimes I guess in the financial department we don't nail it.
Like when you're busy with your snowboarding career, you don't have time necessarily to focus on the business side and to make sure everything's running as it should.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You live and you learn.
You live and you learn. All right, I'll ask you 10 more kind of questions here. These ones are quick. And you can kind of answer them as you see fit. Okay, all-time best style currently and back in the day.
I think you see Oxenden.
Boom.
Especially I remember that one switchback 9 he had in one of the standard movies.
Optigrab?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
I think it was. Yeah. You see an Optigrab. David Benedict's part in that movie is really good too. Number 2, most underrated snowboarder.
Well, there was a Norwegian friend of mine that was on forum a long time ago. His name was Morten Vigeland, but he was on the Youngbloods.
What? Sick.
Yeah. That's such a long time ago. I don't even know if you know his name. But
no, I don't. What was like one of his staple tricks? Like, why was he sick?
He was just like a really compact rider with a really good, just a really good composed style. And sometimes it's if you make it or not, it's just small coincidences.
You have to consistently do something, and then it'll work out. You know what I mean? It's like most people who are really like consistency kind of equals success.
Yeah.
If you do only something just once or twice, unless you just fluke it, you know, most people, as long as and Mon said this on the last podcast, which I thought was really good. He's like, as long as I just like keep trying my best, and I keep pushing my riding, I will end up winning some of these contests.
Yeah.
That's just like
that's kind of the same mentality I had. I was like, if I'm just gonna do my best. If it's not good enough, maybe I won't win, but at least I tried my best. And at some point, if I keep on pushing, at some point you're gonna hopefully stand on top.
Yeah, totally. Because as we always say on this podcast, if you keep pushing yourself out of your comfort zone, you end up achieving a lot more than staying in your comfort zone. You know what I mean? People that are frozen in their comfort zone, you know, I almost like, that's probably my one piece of like life advice for everybody forever. It's just like, try and step out of your comfort zone more often than not. You don't want to jump in the cold water. You don't want to go on the hike. You don't want to go to the gym. It's like nothing feels good when you just stay in your comfort zone.
No,
nothing. The worst thing about professional snowboarding.
The worst thing I think is maybe the risk you would have to take when it comes to avalanches. When you just feel like you have to do your job, and to be able to do your job, you have to be out there. And sometimes you feel like when the camera's on, you have to the camera's on, it's on.
Where have you ever been out in the backcountry and have seen or was in an avalanche?
Yeah, well, not like any big avalanches, but we went to Rainbow. Well, we weren't actually caught in the avalanche, but we were there. We were building a jump, and we were just waiting for the light to hit the landing or and then jump. And we went somewhere else to look for another place to ride or to build a jump. And when we came back, the whole face was just gone, and the crown was on top was like 3 meters. And luckily we weren't there. I think we maybe would have been good just because we were on the side, but it was 500 meters wide, and the whole face was just missing.
Sheesh.
Two people got buried, and luckily everybody survived. But yeah, that kind of reminded us that there is a risk, and it just sometimes it happens.
Yeah, we were out there this year, and Matt ghost rid his sled down this face, and then rode beside his snowmobile, and then was getting shuttled back up to get his board. And while they were getting shuttled back up, the face that he had just ridden slid, and it slid so deep, like 2 meters, and it was just so much snow at the bottom, and it wasn't a train trap, but it was a face that went onto a lake. So all of the snow just piled up on the lake, and it's like, dude, if he was in that, it would have been. And he just had his daughter, and Bo just had his son, and they were both just looking at that like, fuck this, like like there's way more to life than filming a video park to like. And it was a good realization for all of us. We're all like, okay, slowing down in the mountains is cool. Like,
it's okay. Like if you want to not go somewhere, it's in the mountains. It's totally acceptable.
I also feel like listening to your gut is like, billions of years of evolution as a human. There's not just no reason you're getting like this gut feeling that something's unsafe. It's like, listen to that, because sometimes I'm like, we're riding this aspect and I'm just a little bit spooked out by it, and then the next day we go back and we see somebody had ridden the top and the whole thing slid, and I was like, dude, I fucking knew that face wasn't like, something was up. My spidey senses were on, so listen to those. All right, career highlight.
I would say the DCP cliff and Follow Me Around definitely was a highlight, and winning the double gold in 2008 in X Games.
My man.
Yeah.
That must have been crazy. Come on.
Yeah.
What does it feel like to win double gold? Andreas Wiig, the name, the house, it's turning into a household brand at this point. I'm imagining if you wear your beanie with the pom-pom out at this point, people are like, Andreas, and it's like you're turning into a little bit of a celebrity. Then you win double gold, and you are the highest of high. Your adrenaline is going. What does it feel like when a week goes by and you're not doing that anymore? Is there like a low that follows such a drastic high? Like, I'm imagining if you're so much is going in the right direction and you've just won double gold, that feeling must be so intense. And then a week later, you don't have that. I'm wondering if it's almost like a drug. Do you get like, is there a negative that follows up with that high?
There could be a little bit, because you don't have, as humans, I think we like to work hard, to reach a goal. But the thing with like the X Games was that, you have the X Games the next year, and you have, so many other things to focus on, like the next contest, or, to start building your video part. So I feel like after the X Games, I was still in the middle of the season. So I kind of didn't feel like I got that low.
So let me ask you this then. You just get the high, but let's fast forward to today. You're no longer actively a professional snowboarder. You've lived this life in the fast lane where there's constantly a project in snowboarding to focus on. You have a 20-year career. You're one of the biggest names in snowboard history. You have accomplished so much. You're one of the most respected snowboarders, and it's like snowboarding ends. It's quiet now. Was that a little bit of a low, like a year after no longer being a professional snowboarder?
Yeah, that was definitely, from going from snowboarding into the corporate world, if you know what I mean. Like because you have to get a job, and then you feel like, okay, you were in snowboarding, you were here, and like when you get into some kind of a company, you start maybe at the bottom. So that's a big fall from also as a snowboarder. You felt like everything was kind of coming to you, and then you kind of got spoiled. You got spoiled, of course, and I'm super lucky that I've been able to experience it. But it's definitely a big it's a big change.
Did you look at it as, was it humbling? I feel like humbling is a word that makes it feel like you were like, this is okay, this is cool. Or was it like kind of devastating? Like the first year you're like, fuck, this is really tough on my mental game.
Well, the first year I was doing I I got a job at Red Bull. So I was working for Red Bull for a couple of years. And I was also doing a couple of Norwegian TV shows. I was still kind of doing stuff, and I was still in the mix, But I feel like the last couple of years I've been, went back to school, and I'm a student, and that feels like, and everybody else in school, they're 20, between maybe 19 and 23 years old. And so that was definitely a reality check.
But an interesting thing about that is that, if you were to get up in front of the whole class, it'd be one thing if you just partied for the last 15 years and smoked weed in your mom's basement, and then you just finally went to school. It's like, yeah, you've lived a life that most would dream of. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm imagining it does feel like a dream now that all of that happened.
Yeah, it does feel like a dream now, like you were saying, and especially now when I've had a couple of more like normal years where you don't, because before when I was traveling, I would always look at the society kind of from the outside, and go to these cities and you see all these people going back and forth from work and yeah, so that living the snowboard life is an experience that not a lot of people get to experience, and we should be grateful.
Would you change anything if you could go back in time? Would you change anything about your snowboard career? Would you have done anything differently?
I think if I could change something, I would maybe try to get more into free riding early at an earlier stage, and kind of like just try it more. I feel like maybe towards the end I was starting to try a little bit to do some small lines and stuff like that, and we went to a lot of AK, and I think maybe I wanted to, maybe I would have spent some more time doing that, because it's all about how much time you spend on stuff, how much time and effort.
Yeah, I agree with that so strongly.
Easier and easier the more you do it, even though it's really hard. But it's maybe in the beginning I felt like I was coming from, was going from being a park guy to hit more, like maybe I was, I don't know. I wish I kind of mixed it up a little bit more.
Looking back, I'm glad that I'm diving into that avenue a bit more as of late.
Yeah.
It's been really fun, but I'm still on the mass learning curve right now.
Yeah.
Just, I go out there with someone like Razman. Not only does he he's has the talent, but he's been doing it a lot longer.
Razman, he's the man.
Yeah, he is definitely the man. And you see someone like Belzil go a bit more from park guy to jump guy in the backcountry, and now he's starting to ride more like freestyle, like lines and stuff like that, and cruisers. But it was tough this year because the avalanche conditions this year were just so bad. And like you said, it's just like you get older and you realize that you have a whole life to live. And I mean,
starting to look more ahead at to the other life with family and
exactly. So but yeah, you want to navigate that space slowly, but you definitely want to take advantage of taking advantage of the avenues you want to learn stuff in. So like I looked at these video parts and I'm watching like Johan and like, you know, whoever, Kevin Jones and Jamie Lynn and stuff like that, and Craig Kelly ride these lines in AK, which didn't mean a lot to me growing up. And I don't necessarily want to be this big mountain line rider, but I definitely like to ride mini golf faces and stuff like that a lot more now. And I realized that, and the only way you're going to get better is trying to ride that stuff. But in order to get good at riding that stuff, there is this risk of avalanche, and you have to like mitigate that risk with taking an avalanche course, having a really reliable crew and stuff. But not everything is concrete. You know what I mean? It's like there's a chance of everything. So you want to mitigate that risk as much as possible. So maybe on that note, take an avalanche course. What's your biggest pet peeve?
Well, now when I'm a student, if I'm in a group with some other
let's hear this. This is good.
They don't try their hardest, you know.
I like that.
Like, if you feel like they're like, yeah, whatever. If it's that kind of attitude, then that's a different kind of mentality.
Totally, because I'm imagining there's a lot of these kids that are in university because their parents put them there. They don't even know if they're taking a class that they're really passionate about. But when you're there and you're at the age where you actually want to learn, and you're ready for this chapter of your life, it would be really frustrating to go out there with people that don't have that same shared passion. It'd be like filming in the backcountry, and it's a bluebird day, and you're out there with a bunch of snowboarders who don't actually want to take advantage of this bluebird day. And you're like, am I the only one out here that wants to like get some clips and film some POW? And like, you're like, let's do this.
So it's that feeling. And like towards the end of a project, when it's getting close to the deadline, like who are the ones that actually do the job and spend the long hours and, you know, with the projects and put it all in, you know, make it work. That's there's a difference between.
Well, maybe they can look up to you and as an older figure, you can kind of mentor them and be like, listen I know guys. I know that you're young, but let me tell you, if I was your age, I would start to care about something, or you're gonna have a long, stupid life. And you're just gonna party and you're not gonna remember it. So I'm just some advice here. I would focus on this university course so you can do something with your shitty life. I'm just kidding.
Exactly.
Okay. What's your favorite grab on a snowboard?
I would say tail grab. I like, but
it's a first.
Done that too much.
I love tail grabs. Danny Davis has a really nice tail grab. Danny Kass has a really nice tail grab. Actually, Kevin Jones, it's not Kevin Jones, Kevin Young. Someone posted an old K2 photo of him the other day. Pretty sure it was from one of the Shorties videos. No, sorry, it was a K2 ad, so it wasn't from one of the Shorties videos. But he's doing a dope tail grab, and he's all like poked up and like, oh yeah, love that style. Okay, who is the GOAT? Who is the greatest of all time, according to Andreas Wiig?
I would say Travis Rice.
And why?
Just because he's one of those. Well, he's always pushed the limits, and he's been pushing snowboarding to a point where, at the time when he was putting out all those new tricks and all those, you know, amazing lines he did in those movies, there was no one that, you know, showed him the path. He was the one that showed us all the other ones how it's supposed to be done.
Yeah, he did. I remember going to his premieres and just thinking of
it was
how
just unreal.
shitty my snowboarding is compared to Travis Rice. Yeah. Andreas, thank you for coming on the show. I've been a big fan for over 20 years now, and I think that it's hard to put into words how many people you've inspired to either push their snowboarding or to pick up a snowboard. And I think that if it would be, it's tough. Yeah, it's tough to put into words. Somebody like yourself that's been in the snowboard game for 2 decades, like how the impact you've had on so many lives. Like whether it's like somebody just watching the X Games, your slopestyle run, and being like, damn, like I want to go and buy a snowboard, or just somebody who's like, I want to push my snowboarding. Like, and I know a lot of my friends, as they get older and they try to navigate this space, they look up to the guys like you that were doing the triples and stuff like that at 33 out there with Torstein, that like, I can still do this. I can still snowboard at a high level if I want to and take care of my body and stuff. So thanks for being an inspiration for so many. And thanks for just being yourself and not trying to be JP Walker at a young age. Because Andreas Wiig was good enough for everybody. Thank you.
Thanks for inviting me, and thanks for the kind words.
Yeah, anytime. If you're ever in Whistler, feel free to hit up any of us. We would love to take you out snowmobiling and to hang out for the day. Again. So until then, all the best in university. Put those kids in their place. And thanks again for coming on the show.
Thank you.
All right. Peace, boss.
Peace.
That was amazing. Thank you.
Thank you. So now we're not recording.